We used to live in an old house in Virginia, a place where strange but easily dismissed things often happened. Little oddities, like cupboards left open or things ending up in the fridge that didn't belong there, were common. We always found some logical explanation and never thought much of it. But one day, I was home alone, and something happened that I couldn't explain away. I was in the kitchen when I heard a child's voice, clear as day, call out, "Mom?" The sound was so distinct that it made me freeze. I looked around the house, checking every room and even outside, but there was no one there. No TVs were on, and the neighborhood was quiet. It was eerie, and my heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. After that day, the voice became a regular occurrence. It happened most often when I was in the bathroom or the kitchen. I would hear that same clear voice calling for "Mom," always when I was alone. Each time, I'd get the same chills down my spine, the same feeling of unease. Living in that house became more unsettling with each incident. The voice never sounded angry or upset, just like a child looking for their mother. But the fact that there was no child to be found made it deeply creepy. I started dreading those moments when I'd hear it again, knowing it would leave me with that cold, uneasy feeling. Eventually, we moved out of that house. I can't say I wasn't relieved to leave those strange experiences behind. Moving into a new home felt like a fresh start, a place where I wouldn't have to worry about mysterious voices calling out to me. Even now, thinking back on it gives me chills. It was one of those experiences that stays with you, making you wonder about the things we can't explain. While I was glad to move and leave that house behind, a part of me will always be curious about who or what was trying to reach out to us. When I was 13, my family stayed at a friend's old farmhouse while traveling through the area. It was an old, creaky place with a lot of history, and you could feel it in the air. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my mom decided to share a bit of that history with me. She casually mentioned that someone had once passed away in the room I was about to sleep in. Then, with a mischievous smile, she wished me good night. My mom has a pretty twisted sense of humor. I tried to shake off her words and finally managed to fall asleep. But in the middle of the night, something strange happened. I woke up to the distinct feeling of a hand pressing gently on my forehead, like someone was checking my temperature. I could feel it touch my hair, too. Still groggy, I opened my eyes and saw the shadow of a woman leaning over my bed. In the dim light, I thought it was my mom, so I mumbled something and tried to brush her away before drifting back to sleep. The next morning, over breakfast, I casually asked my mom why she had come into my room so late at night. She looked at me, puzzled, and told me she hadn't. She had gone to bed right after I did and hadn't gotten up until morning. My heart skipped a beat. If it wasn't my mom, then who, or what, had been in my room? Thinking back, the memory still gives me chills. The feeling of that hand on my forehead was so real, and the shadowy figure so clear, that I can't just dismiss it as a dream. It felt like someone was genuinely there, watching over me, maybe even checking to see if I was all right. That night in the old farmhouse became a story I told many times, always with a shiver down my spine. It's one of those experiences that makes you wonder about the things we can't see or explain, about the lingering presence of those who came before us. Even now, years later, I remember the eerie comfort of that unseen hand, the mysterious guardian in the night, and the feeling that some stories never really end. I've worked in historic houses for years, and the number one question people always ask me is if the house is haunted. My answer was always a confident no, until one weird day changed that. I've always made a point to be respectful, remembering that these houses were once someone's home, where people lived, loved, and died. One day, I was closing up for the night. I had locked the only entrance and was alone in the house. As I turned off the lights and headed to leave, I accidentally slammed the basement door shut. The noise was so loud that I instinctively said out loud, "Oh, sorry." It felt a bit silly talking to an empty house, but it was a force of habit to be polite. Then, I heard it, a woman's laughter coming from the floor above me. It was light and amused, almost as if she found my apology funny. The thing is, I was completely alone in the house. There was no one else there, no visitors, no staff, just me. For a moment, I stood there, heart pounding, trying to process what I had just heard. But rather than feeling scared, I felt a strange sense of reassurance. It was as if the spirit, whoever she was, appreciated my politeness. She knew I meant no harm. From that day on, I started to understand why people might think these historic houses are haunted. There are echoes of the past in every room, memories that linger in the air. But I never felt frightened in that house. I stayed respectful, and in return, I was left alone, except for that one shared laugh. It's a story I tell visitors now when they ask if the house is haunted. I tell them about the day I heard a ghost laugh, and how it made me feel connected to the history of the place in a way I never had before. It's a reminder that these old houses are more than just buildings. They are full of life, past and present, and sometimes, the spirits of those who once called them home still linger, enjoying a good laugh along the way.